Good morning. Today is the 12th day of Second Adar and the 22nd of March, and we're learning Derech Mitzvotecha from the Tzemach Tzedek, the mitzvah of Machatzit, HaShekel, half the shekel. We're on page Samech Zayin, Daf Aleph, and we're starting chapter 3. This is a longer chapter, and it'll take us at least, I think, a week. So let's get to it. There's one more chapter at the end, which is very short. Okay, because we still have a few things that were left over we didn't discuss yet. So now, Vinei Shnei Minei Mishkal Elu. So there are two types of weight. She'al Yedei HaChochma, because the Chochma, we said, it splits into two, the Yud and the Vav Dalet. So the one side is the weight, the stone that you put on, the Avna, and the other side is what you're elevating, the sparks of holiness from reality. So these two types of weight, She'al Yedei HaChochma, that come from wisdom, are called Nika Avna Lemishkal Ba, the weight that you put on. Ha'echad Kama Yeh Hamshachat V'Gilui Or Ein Sof B'Chol Olam. So the one, he says, the one weight here really is how much of the infinite is going to be revealed. And the second is how much will be clarified, how much will be elevated. V'kama yaman, and to be elevated is called maim nukvin, it's called feminine waters because it's rising. So if we're looking at our scales, so before the world was here and this was empty, and then we put on the wisdom, and the wisdom causes it to equalize. So the wisdom lifted the world, lifted the sparks of holiness. So what's the order though? So he says the order really is that the more is clarified, the more there is a revelation of the infinite in the world. Because first there has to be an awakening from below, and then there's an awakening from above. And he wants to clarify this whole concept some more. What do we mean by that? That first you have to have an awakening from below, and then you can have an awakening from above. So now he's going to tell us about ancient theories of medicine. And the ancient theory of medicine, when it talked about conception and how the fetus is formed, so they knew that there was a seed in the man and a seed in the woman. And who's doing what? Shukma machbetz, and the way they likened it was to making cheese. They likened it to making cheese because that was the process that they saw. Now, before we smirk at it, the difference between modern science and let's say medieval or even Renaissance science was that modern science likes to think mathematically. They want to base everything on math. So even if you're talking about a chemical process, we're not looking at it qualitatively, we're looking at it quantitatively. So we want to write a nice, balanced chemical equation. And we do all our tests to figure out what molecules are in play, and which atoms, and how many valence electrons, and what's going on, and we build the whole theory about how this works based on our quantitative observations. And we'd like to get a quantitative description. But this doesn't tell us very much. If you look at maybe it does for a chemist, I'm not sure. But I don't know if a chemist can look at a chemical equation and tell me what the process is going to look like to the eye. Meaning, will it look like it's going to ferment, or is it going to look like this or like that? I'm not sure that they can tell from just
Could it be like a musician trained?
Right.
Who can look at
You
the
could
score
you see the score, right? But you don't know how it's going to be played, and what is it actually going to sound like, because it depends on what kind of room you play it in.
I see what you're saying.
There's a lot of atmosphere around this.
Yes.
And here it's even more. I think there's a lot of details that would be missing. I'm guessing even how to actually make the chemical reaction happen is missing from the chemical formula. If you take the chemical reaction of photosynthesis, you would never guess that there has to be a chlorophyll. I mean, you would never know that this happens in a certain type of cellular structure inside the cell called the chlorophyll. You wouldn't think that. And then when you see how the chlorophyll is actually built, those higher levels of structure, they'd be very surprising. Why would it look like a stack of pancakes? I don't know, that's what a chlorophyll looks like under an electron microscope. So all these questions you wouldn't see from the chemical equation. Now science today tries to describe everything, all the levels. But usually, and this is very interesting, usually what I've found is, it's not always this way for sure, but most of the time what I've seen is when you want to describe everything from the physical structures all the way down to the chemical equations, to the functioning of the atoms and molecules, what they're going to be doing, you usually get about 7 layers. And the reason I say 7 layers is because in communications, when we look at what human beings do, when we began to use communications, and we had to speak the same language, and we had to know at what level we were working. So sometime in the 70s, it was a 7-layer model that was proposed of all communications, where on the very, very bottom is the medium itself, whether you're running it over fiber optics, running it over copper, running it through space, because you're using a radio signal, whatever it is, you have to have a physical layer, and the physical layer has its physics. And communication scientists usually don't care so much for that. They care a little bit. But then above that, you get another 6 levels of what does it take for me to communicate with you over any one of these natural or artificial mediums. It doesn't really matter. And so this became the 7-layer model. I think it's called the iOS or something like that, 7-layer model. Interestingly, for instance, in photosynthesis, when we come and we analyze it, so when you look in textbooks, you see that they also use the 7-layer model to describe everything from the physical structures in the leaf all the way down to the chemical reactions that are happening when photosynthesis happens. So the science that we're used to hearing is the science that's at the lower levels, and so that's where it becomes quantitative. Above that, it could be qualitative. So now we have this description from the ancient books of medicine that is going to give us a very bird's eye view of what's going on. And this is a description of what you see. It's like what they saw. Exactly what does it mean that they saw? You can't see the ovum, it's too small. You can't see the sperm, it's too small to the naked eye anyway. So what did they see? What experiments did they do or observe? Or what processes in nature did they observe that created this? I'm guessing that they looked at big eggs. Meaning they looked at the egg of a chicken, egg of a turtle, whatever it was, and they looked at the process and there you can do this. You can crack it open anytime you want, and you can see exactly what's going on inside. And so you see this process happening. And to the naked eye, there's certain things that you can see because the ovum's so big, the egg is so big. And the human you couldn't see. So I think they assumed that all the eggs in the world work the same way. All the processes are similar, which is a very normal thing to assume. It's not so strange. So they saw that this works strangely. Shu k'mo hamachbetz, that it's very similar to I don't know how to say this in English, but a special vessel in which you make cheese. And it's called a machbetz. That's what they called it in Hebrew. So what happens in the machbetz? What do you do in the machbetz? In this container in which you make cheese. Meniach ora keiva bichlim alei chalav. So the machbetz is filled with milk first, and then you put the intestines, the stomach of the animal from which you took the milk, or it could be another animal. It doesn't have to be the same way. That's, by the way, one of the big questions in kashrus, in kosher laws. If I take a stomach from a non-kosher animal and I put it into kosher milk, how much does that contribute to the formation of the cheese? Is the cheese now going to be treif because I used a non-kosher animal's stomach in order to congeal it? And what does this do? So, אז הקיבה חמוצה מפרדת חלק הטוב שבחלב. So they knew that the stomach that you put in is acidic, and its acid apparently create an environment or whatever that causes the milk to separate. Because what do you see when you make cheese? It's a very interesting thing. The thing you see is you see that the fats and the proteins congeal, and the water is separated out. And so you see, that's why you have to use a cheesecloth, because you put the cheese into it, and the water keeps dripping out, and you're left with the solid parts. But when you look at the milk, you can't see that, right? The milk is homogeneous to a degree. When you really take milk straight out of an animal, we've seen this because we're old enough already, but young people have no clue about this, right? But there's cream, there's fat. I remember when we used to go to my sister's kibbutz, and the milk there was free. You'd go to a big fridge in the dining room, in the communal dining room, and in the fridge they'd always have this huge container that had milk that they milked from the cows that day, and you take from that. And I was always disgusted by it, because on top there was a real layer of fat. It wasn't like, I don't know how many times people today even see a speck of fat, because everything is homogenized. So you can't, but when you milk it, there's literally fat, there's pieces of fat there. So the milk is also the same way, it's just more homogenized. And then when you make cheese, you're causing the proteins and the fat to congeal, and the water to be separated out. אז הקיבה החמוצה מפרדת חלק הטוב שבחלב, so the acids, what we call a rennet, in the animal stomach that we put into the milk, it causes the good part of the milk to separate, and here we mean the solids, ומתכווץ, and they congeal, בפני עצמו, apart from the water. And what's left? I think this is a mistake in the writing here, but maybe this is a word that I don't know. I would think it's vakrum or something like that, but maybe there is such a thing as a kum. Maybe it's a word in Aramaic, or I haven't seen it. הנקרא מי חלב יתפרד לעצמו. So the water is separated out. So they said the making of cheese is very similar to how this fetus is going to be created. What do you see? You see, in a human being, you see something very similar. What do you see? You see that in the beginning, there must have been something very solid and small called a sperm and an ovum. And then as a pregnancy advances, there's more and more water surrounding the fetus. So you get this idea maybe that the fetus is congealing, and the leftover is the water. And that's the amniotic fluid, right? That's what it's called? Amniotic, not amniotic. Amniotic fluid that remains in the womb, and the fetus is swimming in it. But again, I imagine that when you look at an egg, you see the same thing. I mean, we don't usually see the eggs in the developmental stages. We get an egg that's like not able to form. But if you would take eggs that were fertilized, and you'd look over time, you'd see that there was amniotic fluid around the chick, and at some point water breaks or whatever, and that comes out. So they said that this is how this works also. כי זרע האישה, כידוע, כן זרע האישה מתקבץ תחילה. So first, the ovum, the woman's seed, has to congeal, and that's called man, and that's called feminine waters. And then the seed of the male, which is just a point, hanikra mad, which is called masculine waters, causes a separation inside the man, inside the whatever you had here, which is like the milk here. חלק הטוב שהתכווץ בפני עצמו, וממנו עיקר התהוות הוולד. And so the child is congealing, as it were, out of this milk, this whatever it is that's already congealed a little bit. But adding the masculine seed in is like adding rennet. It's like adding an acidic agent that's going to cause. Now again, I don't know what it looks like when you look at it. Could be that this is exactly what it looks like. You see like solids congealing, and you see the liquids being pushed out. It's kind of strange because, it's not so strange. When you eat cheese, what's the water content in cheese? It's still pretty high. I mean, it's not like you're not eating a piece of charcoal. It's cheese. There's got to be a lot of water in there still. And when you look at a human being, okay, so 70% water still left. Before that he was 100%, now he's 70%. And it could be that is the process that's what it looks like. So that's what it looked like in ancient medicine or early medicine. And Chasidus uses this as a model to explain what we mean. Doesn't mean that it thinks that that's the way. Doesn't mean that the Tzemach Tzedek thought that that's the way a child is actually formed. It's like you could care less. It doesn't matter if it's like this or like that. But it's a useful metaphor because everybody knew how to make cheese, and whoever studied medicine had this metaphor in their heads that this is the way that the child is created. So what does this help us? What we see here is that first there has to be an awakening from below. What he says is the formation of the ovum, the female seed. If that's not formed first, then the mad, the male seed, the masculine waters have nothing to do. They can't congeal the agent. They can't act as a congealing agent. And then he says, and והפסולת שבמן מתפרד בפני עצמו, and whatever was in the feminine waters, meaning in the ovum, is separated out. וממנו נעשה אור הוולד הנקרא שליה. And then the skin of the fetus is created. And what's the skin? The skin of the fetus is a very interesting concept. They didn't think of it ever this way. That the fetus is actually sitting in a second skin. And the second skin is obviously the what do you call it? The shilia. I forgot the name. The placenta. He's sitting within a placenta. We call the placenta the part that's connected to the womb, but the placenta is really also the. So when you look at it, I just saw a birth of a deer yesterday. I happened to see a video of it, and when it comes out, it's like an alien's coming out because you see the placenta is real. It's not like nothing. You don't see a deer coming out. You see this blob, which looks like a bag. A disgusting bag coming out. And that's what comes out. And when he hits the ground, just by hitting the ground, because the deer doesn't lie down for this, she stands up, and he hits the ground, and it bursts like a balloon. And then she licks it, which is okay. She cleans the whole thing. But that's a second skin. It's like another skin that's around it. Okay, but what do we need from this? What we want to take from this is first the ovum has to be created, and then the male seed comes and congeals it. And congelation means that there's a separation of the good part and the negative part, the what you want and the waste. And that, he says, is the same process. From that I learn, again, not because that's right or wrong, just because it's a good model and most people knew it and most people have seen it. And from that I learn how the order of things is when it comes to this effect of wisdom on the world. He says, first of all, there has to be a separation below. There has to be some kind of awakening below. Not a separation, but an awakening below. That awakening can then be affected by the masculine seed that comes in. We spoke about this. We said that first of all, there has to be a first. The reason I said separation before is because there has to be a first stage, which is really done prior to the masculine waters coming down. We said in a regular person, this is like when I eat. So first I have to turn the grass or turn the grain or turn whatever it is into part of me. And in me, there's the same type of process. The waste goes out and I retain whatever is good. And then the masculine waters can come down and elevate me and do a second clarification. Okay, so this is the beginning of our topic for next week. And
Yeah, when are we picking up?
why are we not doing it on Sunday? Because you're going.
A bit down.
You're going. Okay.
And on Monday.
So Sunday, no.
Jerusalem to pay money.
Monday you can't. Okay. So we'll continue with the fundamentals.
Oh, all right.
That's okay with you. Okay, good. So we'll do 2 more days of the fundamentals of Chasidut.